Hello, Matt. How are you doing? Welcome to the podcast, The Wellness Lab. And well, we want to learn more about you and about Aramu. So please feel free to give us an intro about yourself and then what you've been doing in the last few years, to put it simply. But yes, thank you and welcome.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here today. Little background about myself, and then I can do a little background on the business. I went to Clark University out in Worcester, switched majors a whole bunch of times while I was there. Wasn't ever sure exactly what I wanted to do. Ended up basically just being in startups for my entire career. So I'm coming up on, I think, 7 businesses started over almost a 20-year career. Been in a whole wide variety of industries, but sort of what got me here today is a startup that we started back in 2016, sort of looking at the mental health space, where it's a very tertiary care system. I'd say the average patient waits until they're in severe distress to seek therapy. It's sort of like the last ditch effort of, I guess I should finally go to therapy. And that's just a very backwards approach when you look at it next to other health systems, whether that's for our bodies, where we go to primary care, or dentistry, where we go once or twice a year. I mean, even our cars, we're getting oil changes every 6 months. We're doing tire rotations and sort of regular maintenance. That same approach isn't applied to mental health, and there's no good reason why. And I think one of the lessons I've learned in the startup space is that the best business ideas are sort of the why didn't I think of that ideas? And so when I met my two co-founders, who had been doing all this research on the preventative approach, it was that, like, well, why hasn't everyone thought of this idea? This makes so much sense. And so we started this company called Aramu, or Aramu. It's ancient Sumerian for the word love. It's the oldest language for one of the oldest, emotions or expressions. So we started this in 2016 with the sort of our beachhead was preventative relationship health. And that's where we see a lot of sort of the therapy as our last ditch effort of, couples are severely distressed for on average 6 years before they enter therapy, and they walk into the therapist's office and they're like, save our relationship or we're getting a divorce. And it's just, why are we waiting till our tooth is like rotting out of our face to go to the dentist and we expect them to save the tooth? So this is, a preventative, annual checkup approach that now we're starting to roll out across all sorts of other sort of niche areas of mental health, where it's not just relationship specific anymore.
Thank you. Thanks for the insights, Matt. And well, it's a great endeavor that you are working on and obviously changing lives. As you mentioned, mental health hasn't had the proper weight on our lives and the importance we give to you. There's more awareness, I think, but still a long way to go to provide the right care and also being proactive on it. As you say, we wait until something maybe it's broken or there's no other like fast fix that we're like, okay, maybe it's the right time to go and ask someone. And it might have to do as well, I feel, while growing up thinking like, oh, you might go and see, I don't know, a psychologist is like, maybe you're crazy or right. So it's just creating that, um, breaking those assumptions, those barriers and ideas that are there or were there in the past, and thinking the same way as we take care of ourselves physically, let's say, that's the same type of care we need to take. And it can be also, I have had other speakers that are focused on like the kids approach and whatnot, and it makes total sense that we start doing and taking care of it since we're pretty much small, because there's so many changes that happen through life. And the common topic that we know is like this couples therapy, as you mentioned, right? Like, oh, we're going through a rough time, maybe we want to save it, let's just run and do it. But this way to assess it or to have like a maintenance, you say, for a car, is the same thing you're gonna be working on, which is amazing and a great approach. So
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
I think, in sort of that same vein, right, you touched on a lot of things with like sort of the stigma around mental health, just sort of it's intimidating to go talk to a therapist for the first time. And so part of what we've actually seen through the research in disseminating this checkup is that because the idea is I'm doing this as a one and done like annual checkup, it's less intimidating to go talk to a therapist for an hour than like I'm now committing myself to talk to a therapist every week for an hour. And so we do see a lot of sort of the uh, more hesitant mental health seekers actually like do a checkup versus they shy away from like longer term care to start. So it's like an interesting gateway into the mental health field. And you mentioned sort of this like culturally, it's a like I'd say the Gen X or Gen Z. Gen Z is the I think Gen X was sort of the start of the wave. Like we when we were starting this off, we were talking about like the wave of mental health, like starting to crest and maybe break. I definitely think 2016 it was still rising. I think the pandemic really exacerbated sort of everyone's awareness that mental health is like supremely important. And we like quickly switched from like this hesitant society to seek mental health care to now suddenly there's a huge need and desire for it and not enough providers, where now you're seeing wait lists are months and months long and people can't get the care that they need, and there's no one really has a good solution except for like what we've been screaming for years now is this primary care model actually keeps less people out of long-term tertiary care. We still need long-term therapy, but not every, like if we can help people from getting to that point, we can actually sort of lift the burden of mental health sort of disparity between those who are seeking it and the number of hours that exist with licensed providers to provide it. That if like we can shift to a model where we're starting to offer just 10% of a therapist's time, if they can focus that on primary care, primary wellness, there actually is enough mental health professionals that can service everybody. If just 10% of their time is geared towards primary care.
Those are great stats, and obviously that helps create consciousness around what's the importance, the impact, and down the road how much it can improve or um, reduce that burden on the overall system. And I do agree that probably the stigma that has happened has been changing through the last couple of years through pandemic. Lots of people, and that's why we have here this podcast now, are trying to be proactive to know what to do to improve their overall health wellness. So it's a great way with the focus you have. I find, as you mentioned, you come from startups, you've had different lenses and you've seen other things happening, and the specific skill sets that you bring and the awareness to make a huge difference. I think that will also bring another thing to the table that you have experienced and that you bring as part of the value you create for your clients. And one other thing that comes to mind, I know there's obviously this specific couples portion, but also it applies for individuals or more like as a bigger network. Is that how it operates?
Yeah. So the checkup itself, we've got a handful of different adaptations for it, and what we're really trying to get to is sort of a checkup that applies to someone no matter what sort of where they are in their life cycle. And so what started with the relationship checkup, which like if you're married, great. If you're just dating and committed, that it works as well. Like you don't need the official paperwork or a piece of metal around your finger for this to be impactful. That was where we started. From there, it became clear that like there was a significant moment of upheaval in people's lives when they have children, and so we wanted to do a checkup at sort of the 20-week appointment when you're expecting, which can like be proactive before the baby's there. Like, let's talk about sort of what we see happen with relationships once you have a baby. And then at the 6-week postpartum appointment is sort of when we start seeing that like big spike in postpartum depressive symptoms. And so doing another checkup sort of 6 weeks, like, okay, the baby's here, you've started to adjust. How did like the prep work we did 26 weeks ago help? Are there any issues that have pumped up along the way, and can we address those now? What's been going really well? Like, it is a strength-based approach, so it's not just like, small or big T trauma dumping. It is like building resilience for your relationship. And then we do another checkup at the 9-month postpartum mark, where there's another big spike in postpartum depressive symptoms, substance abuse, suicidal ideation, all the bad stuff we want to help tamp down early. From there, we've adapted things for just transitioning, like if you're going from if you're retiring or you're moving, those can be really stressful. And so we've sort of, I think naturally humans are reactive by nature. And so we've built these sort of checkups as like, when this happens in your life, do a checkup, so that we can sort of position it as, I'm reacting to something going on in my life. We're having a kid, or we have an adaptation for like fertility treatment, going through cancer treatment, like all these things that can really change the trajectory of your life. We want to be a catalyst for a preventative approach for relationship health. And then from there, and we also have a family resilience checkup that can be, sort of catalyzed by any of those sort of life moments, but also like if your kid is struggling at school, let's do a checkup so that we can help support that whole family unit. And then we are just rolling out this mental resilience checkup that is geared like purely for the individual. And so I think like naturally as humans, right, like we are, going back through millennia, we are a tribal species. We are like we've always sort of been a community of humans helping each other out. And so, if you boil that down, like that's all relationships, like our friends, our significant others, our family, those are relationships, and those matter the most. Like there's so much evidence out there that shows that people that have strong relationships with the people around them are happier, healthier, and live longer. And so we like, even though the like mental resilience checkup is for an individual, like it does help you identify how to make those relationships with the people around you stronger. And so that's really like the bread and butter of where our research is sort of those like the interpersonal relationships around us. We even have our professional relationship checkup for people who are working together. It's like, the reason people stay at a company is for their coworkers. The reason they'll leave is because of their coworkers. If we can help strengthen those relationships, people will be happier and healthier at work. They'll take that home and be happier and healthier at home as well. And so we're really trying to address the whole like human system.
Great. And as you mentioned, there's specific points during lifetime that they do require that support, that check. So it totally makes sense. And applying it to the workplace, it's also really interesting to hear and to learn, because we normally focus on the typical things as we were discussing, the couples therapy and so on. But thinking about pregnancy and all these phase like motherhood and whatnot, it totally rings a bell. I'm sure for many will do, because there's lots of changes, happiness, like many things come into play, but obviously it's a big change and adaptation. And the other thing that I'm bet it's going to apply, but if you lose someone close, it's also a good time to do a checkup and get this support, right?
Yep, for sure.
Okay, perfect. Because I know like going through someone sick makes sense. Like let's say someone close or in my family has cancer, but then obviously there's this other type of possible scenario, which is not fortunate, but good to know. It's also a good idea to take some
Yeah.
hands on.
Yeah. So like, I tend to overshare. But my dad got diagnosed with ALS. I mean, this was like a decade plus ago. Like the disease progressed, we ended up in a palliative care department at Mass General, which was like, I think fairly new at the time. And this was right around the time we were starting this business. And the whole sort of mindset of palliative care, like kind of translates really well to preventative, like mental health, where we were like, it's different. Like what we're doing here at Aramu is like trying to build the relationship that exists. Palliative care is a little bit more about like how to let go, and like sort of make your peace with things. But it is, it like the palliative care program we went through ended up healing our family a bit, because when you're going through, a incredibly stressful diagnosis, a terminal diagnosis in terms of ALS, or depending on like the type of cancer, like it can be jarring for a family to have to all of a sudden make health decisions for a loved one. And like, do we try all these experimental treatments that could have all this like, that could make their quality of life worse over the short term? with like a small chance of success long term, or do we just try to make them as comfortable as possible? Those are really difficult family dynamics to like work through in real time while you're having the real stress of a loved one going through this. And so, yeah, there is like absolutely a catalyst for, can we do a checkup to like just, help ensure that the foundation is strong, that we're resilient, that like this isn't something that ruins us. It's something that like can help us be closer together. And I do think, credit to the palliative care department. I can't give them enough credit. It became more of a bonding moment for our family than I ever thought something as horrible as an ALS diagnosis would be. And like, obviously it was horrible for the family, but like the way we were able to like see each other, hear each other, and like, try to chart the best path forward for everybody actually was a little bit of a, silver lining through the whole experience. So.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt. And obviously, we focused a lot on like individuals, this yearly checkup as a maintenance type of situation, or if there's a specific thing happening through their life, whichever it is, they can obviously reach out. And you also, I saw on your website, I know you have workshops, you have more like group practice. So feel free to let us know how it works, or if there's something specifically that will give anyone the information to reach out to you and learn more of how you're working. I know you're also working on something that will be more like a project coming down the road by November. So maybe there's lots of questions, but just to see where things are at and how anyone listening can maybe connect the dots and say, okay, this might be great because I am a practitioner and this makes total sense for me, and so on.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, our bread and butter is really training mental health professionals. I can check our stats on our website, but I think we've trained about 3,000 mental health professionals over the years on this preventative approach. So it's typically like a 12-hour training, and you get like 12 CEUs, which is usually great for people. And you get sort of this like the groundwork knowledge of how to do these checkups. And then we have a web platform that walks both the provider and your patients through the actual checkup process. And so, yeah, if you're interested in getting trained, it's a great, we hear therapists all the time that come to us say, like, we usually hear about two main stories. One, I've got a huge wait list and I feel really bad just leaving people on my wait list. But like, the 12, 24 sessions opening up, it's rare. So my wait list is long. We hear a lot from those same providers after we've trained them that while they still don't have 12, 24 sessions to offer someone, they can always find time to do a checkup. There's always a cancellation, right? Like it's something like 20 to 30% of mental health appointment gets canceled or rescheduled anyway. It's great to have a wait list of people who have done the questionnaire for the checkup, that when you do have a cancellation, because, Jack and Jill went on vacation and aren't going to have their session with you, to be able to take someone off the wait list and do something that is clinically proven to have the same long-term effect, the same impact on a relationship that 12 long-term therapy sessions happen. So in just 1 hour, you're able to have the same impact as if they had 12 sessions with you. That's incredibly powerful for that couple or that person on your wait list to be able to like actually help them in just an hour. And then, hey, if you still need long-term care, like that's fine. You're still on my wait list and I'll take you when I can. But this helps buy them time, right? It's helped triaging wherever they reached out to you. The other story we hear a lot is from people who don't see couples or don't have any sort of like relational training, who are, if you're seeing individuals, they're showing up talking about their significant other and the stresses that it's having, or how work is impacting your relationship or whatever it is. And they often want to bring in their partner, but you as a provider don't really have any sort of framework or expertise or like training on this. And so this is a great way where like you don't have to spend 40 hours doing all sorts of different trainings to feel comfortable seeing a couple. Like this brief training plus the website, like make it so that you can have that same 12x impact on the relationship or on your patient directly. I think the other thing on our website is we do have a clinic. Right now it's primarily Massachusetts. We're just adding Florida, Montana, think New York. So we're starting to expand the states that we offer. Hopefully we're going to get a few side-packed providers as well that can really open up the floodgates for being able to service people from all over the country. But that's also another benefit to getting trained, is if you do want to, if you don't have a wait list and you want more clients, like, we're taking sort of the top performers and putting them up on our website where individual couples can go on and book directly. So those are like the two main reasons to go to our website if you want to get trained, or if you are looking for one of our checkups and a provider in the area. Our website can handle that. And sort of that November product that we teased is this mental resilience checkup. And so that's like our first like individual focused checkup. Like it's really derived from the research that we've done over like 30 years now on sort of like how to have as impactful of a 1 hour session where, like, we're just trying to build resilience, right? If you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. If you teach a man a fish, he eats for a lifetime. And so much of the power of this checkup is just identifying sort of the patterns that either a couple or an individual tends to fall into. And so that way, as you, like, before you fall into that pattern, you recognize it and you have some tools to like either help you wedge your way out or just not fall in, or just acknowledge it. Like, this is the pattern. This is how I am. Like, my wife and I argue differently. She wants to go, we call it the cactus and the fern. When we argue, she's a cactus. She needs to be left alone. She doesn't want water. She just needs to like bake out in the sun by herself. I'm a fern. I'm like, I want to talk about it. I need the water. I need the attention. I need the pruning. And that we can't change that. Like, she's who she is. I'm who I am. But knowing that, like, her wanting to remove herself from the conversation isn't a commentary on me or the argument or her investment in the argument. It's just like what she needs to do to like decompress. Just knowing that that's our style has helped us tremendously. When we start to get into a fight, it's like, all right, you need to go take space. That's fine. Just know I'm here needing the attention. Once you've taken your space, please come back, because I need the sunlight. I need the pruning. I need the rain. And so like that's helped us not have, our arguments are not nearly as fiery, because we know, okay, go take your space and then come back, because I'm going over it all in my head, until we address it. And so that's sort of the approach that we're trying to take with people is, just identifying what sort of those key moments, those key like traps that we fall into. If you can identify those, they're way easier to avoid if you know what to look for.
Yes, that's great. And it applies just like we do probably on our workplace, right? If you don't want to get more into, I know, deepen into a certain disagreement, you just need to maybe hold a bit and wait. Know there's different types of stakeholders. So it's the same in a relationship. Everyone is different. And it's great to know with the support in place, you get to learn how you behave or how you react, and also understand your partner, how they react. And it's not something that is good or bad. It's just different ways you take in problem situations, how you handle them, and support each other. So I think that's one of the great things, as you say, to get from these specific relationship checkups, and then how you can better support each other and also learn to understand yourself too, right? It's just when you're a little kid, understanding your emotions and how to handle them.
Yeah. And you touched on sort of this, like the workplace dynamic, right? I think that's where our professional checkup is interesting, because companies are really great at measuring sort of their KPIs, right? Like, what are the metrics that show that I'm doing my job? Did I accomplish my tasks this week? Companies are great at doing performance reviews, right? But what they're not so good at is sort of that interpersonal side. Like, how many times have I written an email, like saved it as a draft, read it like an hour later and be like, oh boy, I got to delete that. Like, I should reword that, right? Like, that's the difficult part of sort of the interpersonal relationships at work, is like, you're not necessarily as tied to a business as you are to your significant other, where you have to figure it out. And so you can lose really good people just because the interpersonal side of things aren't being addressed. And I think like understanding sort of what your like coworkers or your co-founders or like, or your bosses or your reports, interpersonal like patterns are, can help identify that same sort of thing of like, I need to learn to take a beat after I write an email to make sure that like the tone is good, or like I tend to have a more, positive view, and my partner or my coworker tends to have a more negative view. Like, how do we blend that together? That's stuff that like usually companies aren't addressing proactively. It's only when there's an issue between employees, and then it's like, all right, we'll go talk to HR. They'll do mediation, and it's sort of like we're waiting till the problem's exacerbated to address it. And so the whole idea with the professional checkup is sort of exactly what you were alluding to. We're like, if we can do this stuff earlier and often, we're going to identify the patterns within each other and know best how to work, know best what's motivating someone's opinion on something, because we understand them better on a deeper level. And we can like actually solve problems together as a business unit faster and better because we understand each other on a deeper level.
Agreed. Amazing. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. And moving a little bit into a different type of focus would be, you mentioned you're expanding your practice, but also there's like this virtual component to it, so anyone can reach out. That's a question that I have. And then do you have any plans within the roadmap for technology to support patients, and as well maybe your practice too, to reach a broader audience and help more people as well?
Our mission is to make checkups available to everyone everywhere. So like very much our broad goal is to make this as disseminated as possible. The research that we've done and that like others are starting to do on the checkup just shows how impactful a preventative approach to mental health can be. It's disheartening to see. I don't want to like use the boogeyman term of like the media, but like the general narrative or conversation, at least in the United States, seems to be like mental health is a problem. We need to do better jobs at addressing mental health. And that's where the conversation ends. And so it's very easy to be a cynic with no better plan. We've been sitting here with a better plan of like, we need to do preventative care, like primary care for mental health. And so that is very much like a driving motivation behind what we're trying to do here. So in terms of like, and the tech platform's part of that, right? Like we did a study in rural Tennessee where couples that wanted to seek therapy were driving an hour and a half in each direction. And so I don't know what their jobs were, but to take an hour and a half off, like most therapists are working 9 to 5. Right? You sometimes get the after hour stuff, but that's hard if you've got kids. Like it's hard for everybody to do after hour stuff. So if it's 9 to 5 and I have to take an hour and a half to drive there, 50 minutes, right? Or an hour to have my session, and then an hour and a half to drive back, suddenly I've lost half a work day. And that's just unacceptable at like most places. I don't know many jobs that would be like, yeah, sure, take 4 hours off once a week to go to therapy. And so, the web platform was built to really facilitate care quickly and easily. We can all be way more efficient if I don't have to spend half an hour driving each direction or an hour and a half driving each direction. So the web platform walks the provider through the actual like protocol in real time in the session. It also sort of brings the couple in or the individual patient in. They do a brief questionnaire. It takes like 5 minutes. Even if you're being like really thoughtful, like it would be hard for someone to spend more than 5 minutes doing their questionnaire. I think the last time I took one, it was like 2 minutes and 35 seconds, and it was a brand new questionnaire that we were testing. And so like I really had to read it. I didn't know what each prompt was before I got there. So it's very simple to do this. And it's really just to get people thinking about their mental health in a slightly different way than maybe they're currently doing it. And so, the way the whole process works, patient does a questionnaire, they do a 1 hour session with a provider. The provider in real time is using our platform during the session, and then a little bit afterward. It takes like 5 minutes. I've got some fun stories about our work with the DOD where they demanded that we get this like post checkup time to like under 90 seconds, and they fully expected to never hear from us again. And then we came back to them with this web platform where like we got it down to 45 seconds, and they were like, we thought we'd never have to talk to you again. This is remarkable. Let's see what this can do. And that it actually ended up launch the whole company. But so it's very brief for the provider post checkup to sort of fill out this form. And then at the end, we generate this customized like feedback report that's like based on that session. Here's what the research says about this strength and this concern and this sort of pattern. The provider can customize it a bit if they've got like, part of some things that we do is we recommend certain podcasts to people because people like consuming podcasts. And so, if there's a podcast that the provider really likes, they can put in you should check out this podcast and suggest that to the patient themselves. And so that's sort of like all of our checkups sort of follow the same model where it's brief questionnaire, 1 hour session, and then like written feedback report that the provider can customize. And we have seen it sort of lower the barrier to entry for a lot of people where it is like really consumable and they actually have it's not just like, well, we'll talk next week and we'll continue to talk through this. It's like, here's some tangible things you can work on over the next 6 months, and I'll see you in 6 months, which generally fits, I think, how people, I go to the doctor, like, hey, your blood pressure's high, eat less red meat. Like, cool, let me give that a shot and then take my blood pressure in 6 months and we'll see how I do. There's nothing like that for mental health today, except for this, as far as I found. So that's really our goal is like, can we build in this checkup model so that like we can give people stuff to actually do to improve themselves, and like we're going to teach them to fish. So I don't know if I directly addressed our plans for the future, but like we've got we're trying to roll out our checkups to as many providers as possible, and that's through like just our own networking at conferences, through getting in front of like larger organizations that are sort of operating larger practices or EAPs that have contracts with mental health professionals that sort of view this as a way to keep their population healthier. The incentive systems are set up so that health insurance doesn't want to pay for things. And so if we can offer that's why primary care exists. If we can catch things early and often, they pay less money in the long run. And so that's been our pitch to health insurance companies is by addressing mental health proactively, you're going to spend less long-term. They've even done research that show their own insurance companies have done their own research showing that preventative care for mental health will save them money in the long run, yet it still hasn't been fully embraced. And I don't know why. Like if the money makes sense, to me, these companies should be sprinting full speed ahead to the finish line, and they just haven't yet. So I think for us, being on podcasts like this is great because we get to share our message. But every person that does this tends to tell their friends about this of like, hey, this was actually really good. This was helpful. I didn't end up needing to spend 12 or 24 hours or 48 hours for the next year in therapy. I was able to do something in just an hour that improved my relationship with my significant other, or improved my relationship at work, or just improved my own mental health. You should try this. And that's been wonderful to see, sort of the openness that people have. Not many people go to a dinner party and say, hey, my significant other and I just entered long-term couples therapy. But my significant other and I just did this relationship checkup. It was awesome. We learned our own patterns, and now we actually have a deeper, closer relationship. And it wasn't just the therapist taking her side or us arguing for an hour. It was productive and positive. That's something people sit down and tell their friends about. So in terms of our plan is we treat everybody like they're our first customer, because we need sort of that word of mouth and that groundswell. We need that wave, that mental health wave to break, where people are demanding a primary care approach for mental health. And there is research, there is a protocol, there is stuff out there. It's just not mainstream yet. And so we're just crossing our fingers that we cross this line, and that it eventually starts to snowball, where people are informed that this exists and can talk to your primary care provider today about Aramu. I don't know what ad we need to run during a Super Bowl, but that might be it.
Well, we'll start with our podcast and then we'll take it from there. But it's great that way you're positioning it, as you mentioned, relationship checkup. That sounds more like something natural that you do, and it's part of being proactive and trying to make things work. So it's totally a great way to support others managing their relationships and evolving and keeping things. Obviously, we all want to keep our relationships with our loved ones that matter the most sane, but sometimes we do have lots of things coming our way that can create all this complexity, and we are so complex as human beings. So before we wrap it up, is there any specific, maybe, I don't know if it could be a phrase, if it could be advice, anything just to conclude on how anyone listening can make a change in their life, in their relationships? Obviously, we know about these checkups you offer, which are great, but anything you want to provide a bit of an advice or a phrase that might resonate with anyone that might have a bit of a rough situation happening now, and it might be like, okay, this is my wake up call, probably this is the thing I needed to listen before I take a hands on and put some work on it.
Um, Great question. There, there's a lot I think I could say. I don't want to like pump Aramu's tires too much, or like the Checkups tires too much, but I do think, generally speaking, it is better to address things early than late. Early on when we were starting this up and my co-founders were sort of sharing, I mentioned I'm a startup guy. I think in terms of like, what's the problem slide and what's the solution slide. And the very first sort of like problem statistic they gave me was this one I mentioned earlier of like the average couple that enters therapy has been self-identified as severely distressed for 6 years. That is a horrible thing to think about, of being severely distressed with the person you like live with or share kids with, or just are seeing on a regular basis, to be like severely distressed for 6 years before you decide to do something about it, is just not good. And in terms of like your own mental health, your own wellness, experiencing that for 6 years is going to have long-term effects, even if the issue that is like it's all stemming from gets addressed. The impact, the like fissure, is very hard to heal. And that, if I had an open wound for 6 years, it's not going to heal overnight when I stop picking at it or whatever. Like, it's going to take time. And so I think, podcasts about wellness like this one, and like ways to improve yourself, are crucial. Like, that your listeners are already, I feel like, taking the first step of like, I'm actively trying to improve myself. And I think like part of that is understanding sort of what are the things that are having the most detrimental impact, and how can I actually take steps to make those better? Because I don't want to hear stories of people having, mental health concerns or issues for years and years, or relationship issues for years and years, because they were either afraid to get therapy, there was too long of a wait list, insurance wouldn't cover it, they didn't have a good way to afford it. Like, this checkup approach sort of brings all that stuff down. And so that's the fight we're trying to fight for everyone. But I think unless people are willing to like identify that this is something that's bothering me and I need to address it sooner rather than later, like, we all need to sort of work together, I think, to make the world a better place. That was cheesy, but maybe that's my quote. I do think some of the stories we've heard over the years, from couples, like, the couples facing cancer checkup that we have, during our early pilot studies, we, record some of those sessions. And whenever I have, startup life, have a lot of high highs and a lot of low lows. And whenever I'm having a low day, I'll sit back and watch some of those videos and hear the couples talk about how, like, prior to a diagnosis, they were ready to divorce. And then they got the diagnosis and they're like, oh, we'll stick it out through treatment because I'll do right by my partner and stick it out. And then they found out about the checkup, and they did the checkup, and it helped them see their partner in a completely different light, a completely different way. They recommit to each other and like stay together. And like, thinking about sort of the impact, the trickle down impact that has on like their kids, of like, maybe they're not products of divorce anymore, they witnessed their parents like recommit to each other and like fall back in love and like have a deeper understanding and like rally behind this terrible diagnosis and get through it and be stronger on the other side. Like that is an observed resiliency and like commitment to each other that I think the trickle down impact for generations can be felt. And like that to me is what's, it's not just the 6 years of distress that I'm putting myself through. It's like, what are the generational impacts that this distress is going to have on my kids, on my partner, on me, on the people around us, that like we can potentially avoid by addressing things early and often. Long quote, long advice, but
totally valid, and thanks for your insights. So we're gonna wrap it up, but thank you very much, Matt. We're sharing below or all your information, your socials, website, and whatnot. So anyone that is interested, listening or watching us, please go check Matt's website and all the great work he has been doing. And a pleasure having you today, Matt. Thank you very much.
yeah, pleasure to be here. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks.